Thanks for joining me back on my channel, Brewers on Baseball, in my continuation of a series all about the biggest prospect busts from my collecting days. I started in 1988 with Greg Jeffries. I went through Todd Van Poppel, Brian Taylor, Ben Grieve, Ruben Mateo, and now I'm picking it back up again in 1999. And I'm going to start today with Little League World Series hero Sean Burroughs. In 1992 and 1993, Sean Burroughs was the hero of the Little League World Series, throwing back-to-back no-hitters for his Long Beach team to win 2 consecutive Little League championships for the United States. He went on to become an Olympic gold medalist for baseball and was drafted in the first round of the 1998 draft. So as a childhood, that's a pretty dreamlike scenario for him. He was ranked the number 7, the number 6, and the number 4 prospect in baseball, stretching from 2000 to 2002. And he consistently hit above 300 with a 400 plus on-base percentage and really great defense all the way through the minor leagues. So with that kind of pedigree stretching all the way from Little League up through the minor league system all the way to AAA, it was no wonder that he was a huge star and prospect in the early 2000s. As a sign of the times, his rookie card was in 1999, so the first year available after his draft. The biggest cards were obviously in that time his Bowman and Bowman Chrome, and his Topps traded and Topps Chrome traded. Burroughs would be called up to the Padres big league team in mid-2002, and he hit really well with plus defense from 2002 to 2004. His one problem, though, he couldn't produce power, and that was the one thing that concerned a lot of analysts coming up through the minor leagues. They hoped that he would grow into his power, but he just didn't seem to be able to do that. And by 2005, his hitting for average suffered as well. So the parts of his game that were really good at the beginning just weren't up to snuff anymore. He was traded to the Tampa Bay Devil Rays prior to the 2006 season, where he would only play 8 big league games before being released. He retired in 2007 at the age of only 27 years old. Now, Sean Burroughs' story is interesting after he retires as a baseball player. He spent the next 3 years living in and out of motels, battling a drug and alcohol addiction. But by 2011, Burroughs had turned it all around again and gotten clean. And he was signed and played parts of the 2011 and 2012 baseball seasons with the Arizona Diamondbacks and Minnesota Twins. But after such a long absence from the game, he just couldn't play at the major league level anymore. He bounced around in the minor leagues for a couple of seasons, and then after that, played in the independent Atlantic League to finish out his career. Turns out that Sean Burroughs' best time as a baseball player was when he was young, playing Little League and getting a gold medal for the Olympics. But he just wasn't able to grow into a major league caliber player later on in his career. The next guy up, and around the same time period, is Chicago Cubs prospect outfielder Corey Patterson. Corey Patterson hit .528 with 81 runs scored, 22 home runs, 61 RBIs, and 38 stolen bases in only 38 games for his Georgia high school team in his senior year. That is quite the stat line. He was selected by USA Baseball as Amateur Player of the Year in 1998, and as a result, the Chicago Cubs picked him number 3 overall in that 1998 draft. And he excelled in the minor leagues, ranked as the number 3 prospect prior to the 2000 season and the number 2 prospect prior to the 2001 season. Patterson would make his major league debut with the Chicago Cubs in September of 2000 at the age of only 20. Patterson's big cards were in 1999 again, the year after he was drafted, showing him in a Cubs uniform. The biggest ones, of course, were 1999 Bowman and Bowman Chrome, and the 1999 Topps traded and Topps Chrome traded. Those 2 sets in general were the go-to sets for prospects in the late 90s and early 2000s. Now, Patterson would split the 2001 season, bouncing between the Chicago Cubs and his AAA minor league team, and his first full season would be 2002. His game was all about being good at everything, a lot like Ruben Mateo from a previous video. He could hit, he had some power, he could run, and he could play defense. He was overmatched at first in the big leagues, but he had a really decent year in 2003, still only a 23-year-old, hitting .298 with a 114 OPS plus and 16 stolen bases, all before July 6th, when his season was ended with a torn ACL playing against the San Luis Cardinals. Patterson came back again the next season in 2004 and probably had the most productive season of his career that year. But after a slow start the next season, he was demoted in 2005 back to the minor leagues, and then he was traded to the Baltimore Orioles prior to the 2006 baseball season. Still only 25-26, he had another productive season for the Orioles in 2006, when he hit .276 with 45 stolen bases and a 4.2 WAR. But after that, his batting average and his on-base percentage continued to decline year after year, as his lack of plate discipline, his number one fault in his game, continued to plague him. He was released by Baltimore after the 2007 season and went on to play with the Reds, the Nationals, the Brewers, the Mariners, back to Baltimore, the Blue Jays, back to Milwaukee, the Mets, back to the Mariners, and finally the Yankees, all between 2008 and 2013. He hit well at every stop he made in the minor leagues. He just couldn't put it together at the major league level anymore. After retiring in 2013, after playing parts of 12 seasons in the big leagues, he went on to manage the Brookhaven Bucks for 7 seasons in the Sun Belt Baseball League, which is a summer college baseball league, and he's enjoyed a lot of success there as the head coach. Moving along now. Before Shohei Ohtani, there was Rick Ankiel. Ankiel went to high school in Florida, where he was primarily a pitcher, and in his senior season, he went 11-1 with a .47 ERA, striking out 162 batters in only 74 innings that year. He was named the High School Player of the Year in 1997, but he fell all the way to the second round of the draft that same year due to signability concerns, where the St. Louis Cardinals plucked him up right away. He excelled quickly in the minor leagues, being named the number 2 prospect in baseball prior to the 1999 season, the Minor League Player of the Year after the 1999 season, and the number 1 prospect in baseball prior to the 2000 season. Ankiel didn't have any cards immediately after being drafted, but in 1999, 2 companies squeaked him into their products because he appeared for the St. Louis Cardinals at the end of the 99 season for a couple games. That was the 1999 Fleer Tradition Update set and the 1999 Upper Deck Ultimate Victory set. Because he didn't have a lot of issued cards in 1999, these 2 products were highly sought after, primarily for the Ankiel rookies. Now, as I said, Ankiel was called up at the end of the 99 season with the Cardinals, where he pitched really well over 9 games, putting together a 1.42 ERA+. In his first full season in 2000, he went 11 wins and 7 losses with a 3.5 ERA and a 1.34 ERA+, obviously showing glimpses of the great pitcher that he could be. And Ankiel's secret weapon, he wasn't just a pitcher, he could hit too. And not just he could hit well for a pitcher, he was actually a really good hitter and likely could have made a major league roster just being an outfielder alone. The Cardinals could have developed him as both a pitcher and a hitter, but this was back in the time where teams really tried to pick one. Do we think this player is going to be a better hitter or pitcher, and focus on that so that we can develop them and get him to the major leagues faster? And the Cardinals decided that Rick Ankiel would be better off as a pitcher, so they focused him there. But playing for the Cardinals in the National League, he was able to hit because the DH rule didn't exist in the National League back then. The pitchers could hit for themselves. And as a result, for the year 2000, he hit .250 with 2 home runs, more than holding his own as a hitting pitcher. He placed second in the Rookie of the Year voting, right behind Atlanta Braves shortstop Rafael Furcal. So what happened to him? Well, the 2000 postseason happened. The Cardinals won the National League Central Division that year, but due to injuries to their pitching staff, they only had 2 healthy starters going into the postseason, Darryl Kile and Rick Ankiel. To give Kyle a little bit more rest, Ankiel was tabbed to be the starter in Game 1 of the postseason series, going up against the Atlanta Braves and future Hall of Famer Greg Maddux. He pitched well the first 2 innings, but in the 3rd inning, everything fell apart. He threw 5 wild pitches that inning, allowing 4 runs on 2 hits and 4 walks, and he was pulled before being able to finish the inning. The Cardinals were still somehow able to beat the Braves in that series, and their next postseason series was against the New York Mets, where Rick Ankiel was tabbed as the starting pitcher again in Game 2 this time. But Ankiel would not make it past the 1st inning in his start against the Mets, throwing another 5 wild pitches in that inning. He made one last appearance in Game 5 of that same series against the Mets, throwing 2 more wild pitches and walking 2 batters. The sudden inability for baseball players to not make accurate throws or not be able to pitch accurately is something called the yips. The cause of the yips is unknown, but it's believed to be psychological. For some reason, a player gets into their head that they can't make that throw, or they try too hard to make that throw or that pitch, and they just can't have the accuracy anymore. The Cardinals manager of that time, Tony La Russa, later said that the decision to start Ankiel in Game 1 was a decision that perhaps haunts him more than any he has ever made on the baseball field. Now, Ankiel would try to pitch again in 2001, the very next season, and he pitched 24 innings while giving up 25 walks, 25 hits, and another 5 wild pitches. He was quickly demoted back down to AAA, where things got even worse, where he walked 17 batters and threw another 12 wild pitches in only 4 1/3 innings pitched. He was demoted all the way back down to rookie league ball, where he finally got back on track, but this time as a hitter. He did enjoy some success again in 2004 when he came back and pitched for the Cardinals' big league team in relief appearances. But after a 2005 spring training game where he only was able to throw 3 strikes out of 20 total pitches, he called it quits as a pitcher for good and switched to playing the outfield permanently. Ankiel would have some success as an outfielder, grinding his way back through the minor league system again to reach the St. Louis Cardinals big league team, this time as a hitter and an outfielder, before moving on to play for the Royals, the Braves, the Nationals, the Astros, and the Mets. Over his career, he accumulated 76 home runs, but only a 92 OPS plus, showing that he was slightly below average for a hitter, and never really performing at a level that would allowed him to stick with a major league team. He never pitched again after 2004, and he retired prior to the start of the 2014 baseball season. He later wrote a book talking all about his troubles being able to pitch, and even spent some time as a commentator for Cardinals big league games. And the last guy I'm going to talk about in this video, moving into the 2000s, is Rocco Baldelli. You may recognize the name Baldelli because he's the current manager of the Minnesota Twins. But back in 2000, he was a huge high school prospect, drafted number 6 overall in the first round by the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. Baldelli hit .531 with 5 home runs and 9 steals in only 32 at-bats due to an injury-shortened senior high school season. In addition to baseball, he excelled academically, and he ended up turning down a scholarship to attend Wake Forest University and play on the baseball team there in order to sign for $2.25 million with the Devil Rays. He didn't have a lot of history playing baseball, partly due to injuries, partly because of growing up in a cold weather climate in New England. But because of that, he adjusted slowly to professional baseball, including a very short stint at the end of the 2000 season, as well as the 2001 season. But in 2002, Baldelli came on strong, where he had an overall slash line of .331, .370, .521, as he was promoted aggressively from single-A to double-A to triple-A in that same year as a 20-year-old. He earned the Minor League Player of the Year award in 2002 based on that season, and was ranked the number 3 prospect overall heading into the 2003 season. As a result of his incredible success climbing up the ladder in 2002, his rookie cards spiked up in value and collectors took notice. His best rookie cards were the 2000 Topps Traded and Topps Chrome Traded, as well as the 2000 Bowman Draft Picks and Prospects and 2000 Bowman Chrome Draft Picks and Prospects, the first year that Bowman released either of those sets to highlight really young players of the game in a separate set rather than including them in the standard Bowman and Bowman Chrome versions. Baldelli was rewarded for his excellent play by getting the opening day center field job for the Devil Rays at the start of 2003. And he was able to hold his own as a rookie, slashing .289, .326, .416 with 11 home runs and a 99 OPS plus, while playing excellent defense. He had another decent season in 2004, his sophomore year, but prior to the 2005 season, he tore his ACL during off-season workouts and had to have surgery. He was expected back by mid-season 2005, but while doing rehab, he actually injured his throwing elbow and had to get Tommy John surgery on top of the torn ACL that he already had, putting him out for another entire season. After missing all of 2005 and the first half of 2006, Baldelli came back to play the last half of the 2006 season, where he slashed .302, .339, .533 with 16 home runs and a .122 OPS plus. The Rays and their fans were excited to get Baldelli back on the field, but unfortunately, it wouldn't last long. In spring training of 2007, Baldelli pulled a hamstring, and even though he tried to play through it in the first month of the season, in May he re-aggravated the injury, resulting in an even worse injury that required a trip to the disabled list. During a rehab assignment, he was getting better, but just couldn't shake the injury fully, and he eventually re-aggravated it again. And when he couldn't actually come back from that injury, the team doctors shut him down for the rest of the 2007 season. Now, Baldelli and his doctors could tell that this was not recuperating like a normal hamstring strain should. There was something else going on. And in addition to that, Baldelli was often experiencing extreme fatigue, even after short workouts, something that he had never really experienced before. Whatever was going on remained a mystery for some time, but eventually he was diagnosed with mitochondrial channelopathy, a condition that affects neurological pathways and causes severe fatigue of the body. After a while, his doctors were able to design a combination of medications and diet that helped him to be able to manage this condition better. But even though he returned to the field in 2008, his playing time was severely limited because he could only be used on occasion and never 2 days in a row. Baldelli would try to continue to play for another 2 seasons. In 2009, he signed as a free agent with his hometown Boston Red Sox, where he was able to appear in 62 games. And then he returned to the Devil Rays in 2010 as a special advisor to their minor league system. But he did attempt another comeback with the Devil Rays in late 2010 to give it one more shot. And he appeared in 10 games for the Devil Rays that September. He was included in the playoff roster for the Devil Rays that same season, but after starting a game, he actually had to be removed halfway through due to muscle cramping. At that moment that he had to be removed from a playoff game, that's when he decided to retire as a player. He had had enough. Although he didn't announce his decision until 3 months later in January of 2011. The Rays decided to keep him in the organization though, hiring him as a special assistant and a roving minor league instructor from 2011 to 2014. And then he joined the Rays big league squad as the first base coach in 2015 and 2016, and finally became the major league field coordinator in 2017 and 2018. He was interviewed and hired to manage the Minnesota Twins prior to the 2019 season, a post that he still holds to this day. And in that first season as a manager, he took home the Manager of the Year award for the American League at the age of only 38 years old. So there you go. There's 4 more guys, another 2 years, another 4 great examples of prospects that just didn't pan out. Thanks again for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Join me again next time where I pick up in the 2001 season to discuss a couple more prospects that just didn't pan out like they were supposed to. In the meantime, be careful which prospects you invest in, keep talking baseball, and we'll see you around.